for just joining us, welcome to the conversation live with Brigetti Limbanda. Today's stream is made possible by StreamYard and BeLive Media, and I'm your host, Brigetti. We're going to be talking to Dr. Fumene George Tsibani about his book, Nation Building Plan Between 2020 and 2064, Designing Paradise City to Restore Pride Through Wealth and Creation. And to know when we go live, please go ahead and like our Facebook page so you get a notification. And over on YouTube, please click the subscribe button and the notification bell. Don't go away. When we come back, we talk to Dr. Tsibani. And welcome back to the conversation with Brigetti. Dr. Tsibani holds a Ph.D., a Master of Arts, Bachelor of Education, a Higher Diploma in Education, and a Bachelor of Arts, and has more than 29 years of experience in capacity building, training and development, complemented by program evaluation and research in public policy and management. And he also says that he is a boxing fan. And we're going to be talking about his book, Nation Building Plan Between 2020 and 2064, Designing Paradise City to Restore Pride Through Wealth Creation. So let's not waste any more time and invite Dr. Tsibani to the show, shall we? George, and a very warm welcome to the show. So glad to have you join us today.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Limbanda, and welcome to your listeners as well.
Absolutely. It's great to have you here. And before we even start with the conversation, congratulations on an amazing book and getting your book published.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So I'm going to jump right into the conversation because there's a lot that I'd like to try and unpack in the next 30 minutes. Our Rainbow Nation, as we love to call it in South Africa, for those of you who are watching from abroad, we refer to ourselves as the Rainbow Nation in South Africa. We've faced many, many challenges over the past years, and more so over the last couple of months with COVID adding a new dimension to our economic decline, amongst other things. Why are you optimistic about the future?
Thank you very much for that. My background is I'm a sociologist, and I've worked in the Eastern Cape, formulated a lot of initiatives around the nation building plan. My optimistic reason is that the notion of nation building plan was planned in 19th century by Prophet Nzikane Gaba, who said we should have unity in diversity. And his background, his mother was a Khoi, and I belonged to a clan called Amagcicha. So his father was a clan coming from the clan of Amagcicha. So from that, we learned that we should have some kind of unity in diversity. In other words, we have a common background and ancestry in Africa, and we supposed to be working together. And that's the meaning of Rainbow Nation, in my view, is that we could have different features, but we're all having a common ancestry and common race, which is the human race. And that's a principle number one. Principle number two is social. Is that irrespective of different cultures and values, those enrich us and we need to embrace each other. The third principle is that we should be looking at what I call economic cohesion. Whatever we do, we try to work together so that we work to make sure that there's prosperity in our country and in Africa in particular. Thank you.
I absolutely love that, and you are totally spot on. You know, for me, it's always been about seeing each other first and foremost as part of the human race. It's one of the things I'd like to talk about often when we're online. You know, we tend to become keyboard warriors when we're online, thinking that we are anonymous when we actually are not. Um, but if we see each other as all as human first, we will treat each other with a lot more respect. So your book, Nation Building Plan between 2020 and 2064, Designing Paradise City to Restore Pride Through Wealth Creation. What was the inspiration behind that book, and why do you envision South Africa and also Africa as becoming a center or centers for excellence?
Thank you very much. The nation building plan, as I indicated, the vision by Nsigane Gaba was about unity in terms of diversity. And that concept and vision move South Africans to organize themselves into organizations and institutions. And those institutions created response to various natural disasters, problems that we face in the 19th century. You remember, we even have 1929, 1933 depression. And therefore, through the institution that we established, we're able to deal with some of those problems. And secondly, is that if you look at Africa, Africa is one of the continents that has a growing population. So our members and our youth become our greatest dividends. And therefore, if we utilize human resources and empower them, we'll be able to have a prosperous Africa. So in my view, is that we need to make sure that we don't plan for short-term basis. We must have a long-term plan. And we're trying to align African countries into a long plan, which the African Union have actually adopted. And we believe that, for instance, if you take South Africa, we are interdependent between South Africa in terms of rivers. There are 4 rivers that we share with the Southern Africa. We also have cross marriage between the African countries. And therefore, this creates a notion of social and economic cohesion, and therefore Africa becoming a center of excellence. The center of excellence is coming back to if you recall, in our pre-colonial eras, Africa have a civilization, and that civilization was formed by kingdoms that were very, very stable. And therefore, we need to connect ourselves to that. And one way of doing that is that we must have a nation building plan, social and economic cohesion, so that the heritage that we have and the towns that we have, we utilize for sustainable community development initiative, looking at agricultural development, looking at tourism, as well as ensuring that we have a better infrastructure for us to respond to a number of natural disasters that we have faced in the country. COVID-19 have actually demonstrated beyond reasonable doubt that we need to make sure that we prioritize farming, and we also prioritize agricultural production, because we cannot depend on money. You only depend on the resources in terms of food production processes. So going forward, Africa have to prioritize 3 things between now and 2063. Is water infrastructure investment as a catalyst for sustainable development. The second one is energy, so that you have alternative solutions to a number of problems, utilizing the current, what I call advanced technology solutions. And then the third one is food processing. We do know by 2030 we'll have a food shortage, particularly in South Africa, after we have some droughts that we have. So we need to invest around food production. We need to invest around farming. We need to also subsidize South African farmers because we need to have a competitive edge for us to recover from COVID-19 devastating impact.
That leads right into my next question to you. Can you expand just a little bit on the roadmap that we need to follow to excellence to make this an achievable goal? I mean, what the things you mentioned now are all magnificent things that we would love to see implemented, but how do we, is it achievable? What do we need to do to achieve it?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I would like to say that firstly, I'm happy that organized business and private sector in South Africa have put up their hands to support our South African government. That's the first sort of achievement in my view as part of nation building plan, because government on its own cannot deliver on sustainable infrastructure investment. We need to have private-public partnership initiatives that are taking place. So for me, the current recovery plan that the president presented to our cabinet in South Africa should be replicated in various African states so that we can have the free trade agreement can sort of be resuscitated for us to deal with our own structural problems and infrastructure project. I will always say that in the book, we highlighted 5 things. The first one is that God created 5 fingers for a purpose. First finger, we need to look back at what I called planning. The planning should be prioritized as a best mechanism to deal with the current infrastructure and provide engineering solutions that are able to stand the time as well as adapt to climate change. The second one is the issues of finance. Financing of infrastructure should be a transboundary financing model with the private sector so that the issues of operation and maintenance of infrastructure are shifted and those risks to private sector for government to focus on policy and regulation against the environmental impacts that we're seeing in our country. The third one is sustainable planning. Sustainable planning depends largely on institutions. We need to review our current institutions, and this is what I'm highlighting in this book. Reviewing those current institutions will assist in terms of ensuring that we have institutions that are able to prioritize all the identified needs and requirements for Africa to grow and prosper. The fourth one will be monitoring and evaluation. That monitoring and evaluation largely depend on the investment on capacity building and training and skills transfer. Now, that is a critical area that South Africans and the African states should benefit and look at. One, we have the youngest, we have the dividend of youngest population in Africa. So investment in skills program is critical for us to talk about reviewing our initiatives in terms of the figure that is figure 5. So for me, it's planning, co-funding initiatives with developmental finance institutions. Third one, sustainable programs linked to required needs in terms of long-term investment. Fourthly, we need to have inter-training programs. Those African programs must provide opportunities for young South Africans and young Africans for them to take over our initiatives, including your 4th R revolution. So for me, that's very important. And the last one, we need to have a proper evaluation in terms of performance. The performance is critical in a sense that without performance, you are not able to judge the impact that we need to have. Now, the sustainable goals are indicating, among other things, that we need to have output and throughput instead of having input and output that we are having at the moment. So that's the emphasis that we are highlighting in the book. So planning, infrastructure investment, co-funding with the private sector, particular issues of operation and maintenance should be run concurrently with private sector investment models.
Thanks very much, George. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about our internal messaging and how that can propel us forward.
Thank you very much.
And welcome back. We want to say a hearty warm welcome to our viewers on YouTube, over on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Periscope. Thank you for joining us, whether you're watching the show live or on the replay. Please join us in the comments. If you have any questions for us while we are live, please go ahead and post those as well. And so thank you for joining us. George, we are always told that whenever we want to move forward in life or in anything, through any struggles, through any challenges, we need to keep our internal messaging in check. And so in your book, you use acronyms like pride, wealth, space, the 5 C's, the 4 E's, to emphasize the importance of a roadmap towards nation building, past the global economic depression that we're experiencing at the moment. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that can serve us?
Thank you very much. I'm hoping I'm not going to interpret the book too much so that people can read it. Firstly, the title says creating and designing smart cities or paradise cities. A paradise is a type of a municipality that make a state of equilibrium. There's governance, there's stability, there's economic development, there's network and interconnections. That's the first thing that we're looking for. And we're saying we are an African country, and therefore, when we talk about cities in Africa, we should be talking about values that align to Africa. It is really unfortunate to say that most of the African countries have never built a new city that is aligned to their values and principles. So we need to have post-city colony type of an environment that we need to create, linked to Ubuntu principles, look at identity of us, because cities are symbols of our identity, of our history, and of our values. So that's the first principle that we need to look at. Now, wealth creation, in my view, is that water must be linked to energy, agriculture, land reforms, as well as technological use, as well as the health facilities. Now, that's the wealth part of what I'm talking about. In other words, whenever we're doing programs in Africa, we should be thinking about land spacement and use of land, optimal use of land. We also need to look about technology. There's no justification whatsoever to say that you cannot build a dam because there's a lot of evaporation. I mean, we have technology to deal with that. We need to look at infrastructure in terms of health facilities. That is very important as well. So the wealth part is about water nexus that are linked together. Then I said, for us to do that, in my review of number of best countries that have developed and survived the Great Depression, if you remember, they all have gone through what I called restoration of pride. It sounds political, but it's not. It is about production, reindustrialization, innovation, domestication of services, so that there's a local manufacturing. I mean, if we all have programs that are doing with local manufacturing, you are guarantee of your text, you are guarantee of jobs, you are guarantee of opportunities for young ones, for them to take over through initiative, and therefore have E, which is your enterprise. So the word pride stands for production, reindustrialization, innovation that is critical, domestication of our service through manufacturing, and then enterprise development. In South Africa, we have failed completely around enterprise development, including other African states. If you look at the Asian tigers and China, for instance, their enterprise development, they understood that that's where you can make township development programs. And they emphasize on their SMEs. And in South Africa, we don't have that program in place. So we need, as African state, take opportunity of the free trade agreement and utilize enterprise development plus domestication so that we can have trades between the countries. We need deliberate attempts. We may have to take a decision to say Mozambique, for instance, focusing on ocean economy, South Africa focusing on farming in terms of agriculture, grazing. Then you have another country doing something so that there's this interconnection that we can build on. That's the meaning of what I'm talking about. Now, I'm saying this can only happen as well if we have what I call the space competency. The space competence is referring to the leadership that we need to have. A leadership that is able to look at the space, which is your situational analysis. We do not have to take ideas from Europe and apply them in Africa, which they are not going to work. You have
sorry, can I interrupt you there,
yes,
George? That's
sorry.
a very interesting point.
Yes.
That you raised there, because
yes.
it's something that keeps happening again and again and again.
Yes.
You know, there seems to be this misinformation that because something works elsewhere, we must be thankful in Africa that we can adopt their model, but it simply does not work.
Yes, it does not work because you have your ministers, your officials going elsewhere. There's a typical country in Africa called Burundi that has developed a lot of initiatives and is investing in itself. We don't go there and learn from Burundi. We want to go to Germany. We want to go to Asia. We want to go to USA. You want to go to UK. In UK, if it is not raining for 3 days, it's called a drought for 3 days. And we're sitting with a country that has droughts everywhere. So we need to have people, leadership that understands situational analysis. We need to have the presence. The present part of space means we need leaders that make policies that are stable, policies that are sort of what I call linked to environmental needs. The human needs and the environmental needs are balanced. So we need policies around that. That's the presence that we need to have. We need to have authentic leadership. In other words, there must be integrity. Whenever we are explaining about Africa's problems from Europe, from Asia, the statement must be the same everywhere you go. That is lacking in Africa. That is the A part of it. Then you have clarity. We have a mixed communication. We need to, you see, this platform, for instance, is a platform where we need the C part of it. We have a good values that we have in Africa. We have mineral resources that we can utilize. We can feed a lot. But we don't have a clear communication in terms of the strategies that we have. So we need a platform of this nature to be utilized so that we have clarity and people understand the plan that we want to achieve. Then the E is the empathy. You must understand the other side. Whenever there's elections, the people have a vote. They must see the vote results. The vote results is about wealth creation, is about water availability, is about energy efficiency, is about agricultural products, the bread and butter issues, is about land utilization and optimization. It is about technology for them to be connected in the global community. It is about health facilities that when your parent goes to a clinic or a hospital, he's able to come back because the health facilities are prioritized for Africans and the citizen. When a minister is sick, he is not going to China or Europe. He goes to the hospital where people are. It's looking back to our infrastructure in terms of schools. For us, we need to revise our schools because that's the centers that we need to have. And Africa is not like other countries. We have the highest population and rapid urbanization that we need to deal with. And this needs the wealth creation aspect of it. And this can be done to restore pride. For us to do that, we need reindustrialization initiative. So it's a paradigm shift, Mepanda, that we need to deal with. That leadership must not be about political leadership or management. It is about innovation, it's about reindustrialization and domestication of infrastructure investment models. That is what is required in Africa for us to turn it around. This is the biggest country in the world that can actually, with its raw material and with its own minerals, can be able to fill the whole world together. That's what we're. Yes,
George, we'll take one of the questions here in the comments.
Okay.
Bulalang says, does being divided into nations not weaken the ability of Africa to have coherent policies?
Okay. No, thank you very much for that question. The division of 1884-1885 was one of the weaknesses the European countries have done, which is the Berlin Conference. I understand that. We've passed, that's history. We've seen that as part of history. What you do about history is what you do is your action that is required. For instance, we have catchment management agencies. We have SADC region. I've mentioned earlier on that South Africa is sharing 4 rivers with 4 countries in the Southern Africa. Do we have a project that is linking those 4 countries? No. We are working as Mozambique. We are working as Zimbabwe. We are working as Eswatini, and we are working as Lesotho. At least between South Africa and Lesotho, there is a bilateral program. Now, that transboundary program would have addressed a lot of social and economic cohesion, including the notions of exchanging programs between the countries that are in the region itself. So for me, dividing the countries into nations is not a problem if you have a proper leadership that understands the notion of space competencies, which is your scientific situational analysis, your presence in terms of policy that is going to look at the cohesion that you want to have, the authenticity of those leaders to have a sense of integrity and responsibility and accountability, and then clarity in terms of communication per region, and therefore empathy to understand that policies that we have to deliver on, we are facing abject poverty, we are facing systematic unemployment, we are facing increased inequalities. That empathy of ensuring infrastructure investment for youth development and also designated program for women will be actually the gatekeepers will be actually the solution to deal with issues of divided nation. For me, dividing the nation is one issue, but utilizing cohesion between, for instance, you cannot tell me that there's a difference between myself and some people from Lesotho. We are interconnected. Swaziland the same, and so forth. So even if it is Swaziland, we don't see the difference. We're part of the region. And this region must work together for it to prosper and to be competitive. And the free trade agreement is all about that.
You know, you've touched on so many points that I feel needs further conversation and discussion. And one of the things I'd love to pick up on another conversation with you is this messaging that we have, that as Africa and as South Africa we are not good enough. We need to start reframing that messaging, because that is going to be the start of conversations that's going to lead to a lot more empowerment for us in Africa and in South Africa, and to stop looking for solutions elsewhere. We have enough knowledge in South Africa and in Africa for nation building and to strengthen our economy. We need to look within. We can look within, but we must start reframing our mindset that solutions can come from elsewhere. We have the technology right here.
Sure. To add on what you are saying, the most of the civilized societies, they will go to Egypt for the pyramids because they don't understand what the pyramids, how they were planned, and so forth. Yet, South Africans, people from Zimbabwe, Botswana, and so on, West Africa, and so on, they will go in Europe. The knowledge is there that we need to utilize. We need to learn among ourselves on projects that are visible and try to profile those projects. And also look at exchange initiatives between the countries. That's why the free trade agreement must be institutionalized. Good ideas without institutionalizing them cannot lead to delivery.
Dr. Tsibani, thank you so much. We're out of time for today, but I would really love to invite you back to the show again, because I think that these kinds of conversations are important if we want to propel ourselves forward. And so I want to thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much to yourself for organizing me to be part of this interview, and your fellow listeners. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Just before we say goodbye, quickly tell people where they can find your book.
My book is published by Ulink Media Print. It is found in the Amazon. So you said GT Tsibani, Nation Building Plan, and then it will pop out. Thank you very much.
A big pleasure. Thank you for joining us, everyone, and have a great day further.
Thank you.